What is the ego? All right, so the ego, as I understand it, is essentially your mind, the thoughts, the definitely the beliefs, like whether it's the thoughts and ideas that you have, but the mind, it is this aspect of your composure. It's something that you are comprised of. That is it's a funny thing. So, like, one of the issues with it is that some people, um, because the mind is about details, whereas, like, the intuition is not about details. So, it's like, the beautiful thing about the intuition is that when you listen to your intuition, it's just yes or no. Whereas the mind, it's trying to calculate all these things, trying to figure things out, trying to understand, trying to grasp stuff, trying to calculate to, like, or whatever, that kind of a thing. So, whereas, like, when you just listen to your intuition, it's like it's tapped into something. It's like it's tapped into everything, and it just gives you a basic answer so that you can proceed without needing to go here. And then if you need to, based on the answer that you got from your intuition, then you can use your mind to go into it, to go into the details and sort it out. So, of course, it's a marriage between the two things. It's beautiful. I mean, it's a part of a system, it's a whole system. But what is the thing is with the ego, it's like, so as an example, it'd be like, okay, well, I might say I am a yogi. But what about when I wasn't a yogi? And what about if I stopped doing it? So it's like, it's a funny thing, this whole identification and this labeling. Be like, well, you're this and this is this and that is that, and I understand that, and you're that, and he and she's that, and then we are this, and it's just like, okay, sure, in a sense, on a level, but there's more to it. And so, colloquially speaking, with like how people talk, like, yeah, I mean, you do have to use these kind of terms. I mean, we're not always having these deep spiritual kind of talks, about fundamentals, right? But it's like, I think, but these are important too. Just like, yeah, everything is important. And so it's good to have both perspectives. And it's like, it's a funny thing with, like, because it's to do with identification, and so therefore identity. To say, well, I am this and I am that. I am a vegetarian. I am a vegan. I am a meat eater. I am a okay. And that is a level of it. This is just an identification. I am a man. I am a woman. I don't have a gender. I'm both genders. I mean, like, so, okay, like, but when fundamentally, I mean, it's more towards, like, as I understand it, more fundamentally, it's like you are a soul having a human experience, one of a possible of many. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is not like your one and only incarnation. It's like, they say it's like, if you exist now, you always have existed, you always will existed, you are always who you are. You are this aspect of all that is, and you have chosen for whatever reason. I mean, can't really get into the whole to do with incarnations and stuff right now, just because I don't honestly have it all sorted out for myself. I mean, one day we'll share about it, but anyways, just like, so to say that I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a man, and that's true. I would say that for myself. But I'm also have a lot of feminine energy. I mean, there is a woman inside. I mean, I don't mean I'm a woman in a man's body. I mean, I'm a man, but there is a lot of feminine energy in me. I'm creative. I am gentle. I'm nurturing. I'm caring. I am, yeah, lots of things, right? Aside from being logical and strict and responsible and thinking about very big picture kind of things and not so much just about myself. I mean, and so that's the funny thing, like you can get lost in these labels and ideas of stuff, and that's the ego. Say I'm a rod buster, an iron worker, until I'm not. And then, and what was I before that, and what am I after? I mean, it's just a way to, it's a way to express yourself. It's a way to sometimes you do have to identify yourself when you're talking with other people. What do you do right now? I am a handyman. I work at a place, and I am though, but I've always been that. My whole life, I just enjoy fixing things, making things better, making things pretty, making things awesome, making things functional, doing stuff I like, learning things. I've never held a job for more than 2 years, so I have quite a range of experience. You've seen a lot of stuff, then you're able to then I'm able to hold a position which would greatly benefit from a person such as myself, and that is what I do right now. But am I that? I don't know. I like to say it's like I'm not a worker. I'm a leader. So I would say that, it's like I guess it's not that you just have to be careful with what you say. And, you'll know if something's you, because it's always been you. It's something that I think is beautiful. It's like, baby kale, the plant that people eat, kale Caesar salad, that kind of thing. So it's like kale, baby kale. So I sprout certain things. I used to do microgreens and stuff like that. And so the baby kale, it contains like 40 times more nutrient density as a small plant than it does when it gets big. And to me, this is like a metaphor of like, we always are everything we're ever going to be. We just get bigger, we get a little bit older, but your essence is with you from the very beginning. I mean, this is a beautiful thing. There's another thing too, I don't know how it works, but it's like something that I think is really beautiful is how, like, there is a tree, it's an apple tree, and it takes time to mature. And it takes time for it to produce a fruit. And then even once it starts producing fruit, it takes time for that fruit to contain a seed which is mature, that has an accurate representation of, like, fidelity. It is true to the image of the plant in its entirety. It contains the essence of that thing. So I don't know, I guess it's just back to essence, but I love the metaphor of just how maturity and then the essence. Anyways, so I mean, back to the ego. The ego it's a funny thing, it's a place where a lot of people go and get lost, because to do with, I'm a this, I'm a that, and it's just like, and it's not pointing fingers. It is like, if you have learned to identify these qualities that are associated with ego and made your way, say, healed your relationship with it, with your mind and beliefs and ideas and thoughts and everything that's all connected, you are, I'm just going to say it, like, pretty rare, because it's where most people are at. I mean, if you're even just identifying these things and working with it, that's beautiful. I'd say it's not something, you don't ever overcome. I don't think you exactly overcome the ego. You learn to not get lost in it. You learn to not abuse it. You learn to recognize it. You learn how to work with it responsibly without getting caught up, without getting carried away, and without getting lost. And so they say that the ego is synonymous with the structure of reality, your beliefs. It's like to do with a feedback system, so that you you receive feedback from the universe to do with where you're at so that you can grow, because we're here having a learning experience. It's not like we're just lollygagging all day in the sun for what it's worth, right? I mean, there is serious work to be done here. It's also why I understand that so like you can if you work with plant medicine, it's possible to open up your perception to a wider range of some things that are going on. But the reason why that stuff is kept at bay when you're not working with medicine is because if you could see all of that stuff all the time, you would just be so caught up in it and distracted, you wouldn't be able to get anything done. And I mean, it's like you have work to do, personal work, shadow work. You have to work on yourself. You have to unpack your childhood, and you have to really find your place. You need to get grounded and centered. So it's like important to, to be centered and grounded. So what else is there about the ego? It's to do with like, identification and understanding. It's that thing. It's like, oh, well, yeah, like the thing about, it's like when you think you understand something, then it gets filed in your mind as understood, and then you stop learning instead of just remaining open. They say, what is it they say, that it can be quite difficult to wake somebody who is sleeping, but it's almost impossible to wake somebody who's pretending to sleep. It's the mind is a funny thing, how it like compartmentalizes. That's a big word to do with how the mind works and how it handles information. And the whole self-imposed ignorance thing. It's like, they say, some people say, oh, well, ignorance is bliss. It's like, no. Ignorance is slavery. The less you know, the more that you're subject to. When you don't understand what is going on, then you are not able to work with the elements that are present in the same way as somebody who is developing an understanding of something is. So it's like it is in your best interest to have an awareness of this kind of stuff about what the ego is, and learn how to identify it and identify when others are there, so that you can not get caught up in those kinds of conversations. And so then you can recognize when you're there, when you're making judgments about things, and when you're not accepting things, when you don't say trust in the intelligence of life itself, right? I mean, yeah, it's a goofy thing, the ego and how it behaves. I myself was like, I am an intellectual, right? I will wear that, but it's like I used to think that the ego was, or no, it was like my intellect was everything, to understand things, to tear things apart. But it's just like, just because you can tear something to shreds, to rip it into pieces and expose it, it's like, I found it's like when you do that, when you expose something for what it is, you rob it of its magic. And magic is a thing. It's not something to be overlooked. Like, you just intellectualize everything and just like be like, oh, well, this is this and that is that is that. And it's just like, wow, there's just no beauty left, because you just went and like spoiled it with a bunch of words and ideas. And it's like, you think that you're doing a good thing, but it's just like, I don't know, if you've gotten beyond that, it's just like, yeah, anyways. I mean, so yeah, the ego, it's another part of it too. I've had a few run-ins with people. I'll say, unfortunately, becoming more aware of this ego and how it manifests. And I am growing less. I'm creating distance between myself and people who are very egotistical, who are not operating from this heart center, who because they're closed off to certain things, and they're dealing with an understanding, and it's like you can tell sort of what's going on, and it's just like it's just not healthy. It's not my place to explain things to people. I don't need to understand them. They don't need to understand me. It is the ego that needs to be seen. It's the ego that needs to be heard. It's the ego that needs attention. It is, it's the neediness is the ego, and the fighting anything, and the power struggle, and being right and wrong, and like taking ownership of certain things. So like taking ownership of things, it's just like, so, you can be like, some people be like, yeah, this is my idea. I thought of this. I came up with it all by myself. Yeah, this is me. And then want like praise for it, and just, and then, but the other way is like, for myself, I don't claim ownership of anything that has ever come to me. I don't be like, this is my idea. I came up with this. This is me. It's like, no, I am grateful that I have been able to tap into certain understandings when they have been relevant for me to do so. So then you give credit where credit is due. You recognize that there is something greater than you, greater than your ego and all of your intelligence and everything that you understand. And it's just like, it's beautiful. And it's hard to explain that to some people, because it's a different understanding, and it's just not quite where a lot of people are at these days. But it is something that I do believe that we're coming into, and that's why there are people who can teach that kind of thing. There is a couple of things. So like definitely the Tao Te Ching by Sioux really helps with the whole ego deal. Because it's just a completely different understanding, and then you might start to get it and just like, I really love the Stephen Mitchell one. And then so there's also this thing called A Course in Miracles. I would say that it is geared at that, although I personally wouldn't recommend it just because it takes a bit. Some of the language, it is, and some of the language you can struggle with, just like say the Bible. I mean, there's a lot of things in there's some truths, but it's like, if you're not in the right mind state and you don't understand certain things, it's just like you can get very lost, and your ego can be like, and so it's like not for everybody, right? But it's tough when there's like certain truths there, but at the same time, it's like, some of these things are very old. Say the Course in Miracles, it was like, channeled many years ago. And it's like, there was an understanding at the time. And so it's kind of catered towards that time, people of that time, very heavy Christian influence. And this is the same issue with, say, yoga as well, is that some of the teachings that I have studied, they're from a time when there was that was a more prominent thing. And so it's like it's catered towards that, but now, and it's like, how do you rectify the difference between when it was created and kind of what we're doing now? And so it requires a degree of synthesis. It needs to be taken with a grain of salt. But that is no small feat. And so, but there are ways. I mean, and there are other teachers as well, of course. I mean, none that are just immediately come into mind, but I mean, that is some stuff. So, I was saying, like, I've had a few friends that I have noticed this ego in very strong. And you realize it's just like, sometimes people, they'll be like, oh, well, There's a guy who was making a meal. He's like, I put some cut up some like greens or like some arugula. He's like, oh yeah, I like how you like cut it up and then you hide it in there. It's like, hide it in there. It's like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not doing something. And it's just like, some people, they have this idea that it's like you're doing things because they're always doing things. You're working an angle. You're just, it's like, no, 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 no. I'm doing something that I love. I do what's in my heart. I listen to my intuition when I'm cooking. If it wasn't beautiful and tasty, I wouldn't put it in a meal. Like, why would you eat anything that doesn't look, isn't like appealing to all of your senses visually, aromatically, and like taste, right? Like in its raw natural state. I mean, I personally don't eat anything that doesn't have those qualities. You should be able, it tells you something like you are from here, earth, right? I mean, you eat things, you like if it tastes good, if it's enjoyable. I think that's how it's how for myself anyways. And so, like even, corn, if you ever, I come from a place where they grow corn. It's like the sweet corn in the summertime is good. It tastes good. You can eat it raw. Apples, you eat them raw and stuff like that. Yeah, but it's just funny, how some people, there's just this ego thing that it's like a driving force and it's like about being right. And it's about like, oh, did you know that? Oh, you didn't know that? Oh, and it's just ego. And it's just like, ooh. And then there's another thing to do with noticing. So there's this thing. It's just like, oh, well, yeah, I noticed that. And then it's not enough to just notice something. They need to tell other people that they noticed something so that they know that they noticed something. So then they therefore there's some kind of like recognition that they are a person who picked up on something. This whole thing about being seen, like the whole attention thing, it is childhood. I think all of this stuff kind of comes from childhood. I mean, we all have our childhoods, and it's yeah, I would just say it's not the hand you were dealt, it's what you did with it. And I know I'm sure some people had some pretty rough ones, and that's why you got to be so nice, because like, I believe that it's like you might think you can point fingers at somebody, but like we were all, you might think it's easier for some people or this or that. You're wrong. There are challenges associated with every level of life experience, no matter how much money or this or that kind of goes on. And it's like, we are all brought into this world under the exact same conditions, which is blind. Nobody gets to choose what they'll be taught as truth, and nobody gets to choose what they'll be shown as way. And going against the grain is often much easier said than done. So you have to have compassion for absolutely everybody. This is about inclusion. We need to stop the segregating and pointing fingers and judging and be like, hey, we're all in this together. So let's spread a little bit of love. Yeah. And get in the heart, and use our heads too and listen to our intuition. So yeah. That's good for now, I think. It's funny because it's a head thing, right? But anyways, yeah. Take care.